The atrocity arrived at Earth wrapped in legal language. It was broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever used: civilian, military, emergency, forgotten relic bands from old wars. The Zarati Empire called it transparent corrective action. They translated it into 8,000 dialects, helpfully adding subtitles for the illiterate. The footage began calmly. A city under a soft yellow sun. Human architecture, curved towers, solar veils, greenery integrated into steel. New Kyoto had been a model colony, a symbol the diplomats loved to point at whenever aliens accused humanity of being violent by nature. Then the sky darkened. Zarati compliance ships descended like cathedral-sized insects, their hulls smooth and ceremonial, painted with imperial glyphs meant to inspire awe, not fear. Loudspeakers activated. Population of New Kyoto. The envoy announced, voice measured and precise. Your expansion license has been revoked. Please present yourselves for verification. People obeyed. Of course they did. That part hurt the most later. They lined up in plazas. Families held hands. Some still believed this was politics: fines, deportation, sanctions. Humanity had played the civilized game for 40 years. We'd learned the rules. Or thought we had. The verification scanners activated. Children failed first. The envoy explained it politely as it happened. Genetic volatility beyond acceptable variance. Cultural persistence risk classified as extreme. Plasma fire followed. Someone in the Earth Council chamber whispered, "Turn it off." No one did. The Zarati recorded everything. They didn't rush. They didn't scream. They documented. Camera drones hovered patiently, zooming in on faces, reactions, the way human beings look when they realize the universe does not care about their rules. Atmospheric processors were repurposed mid-broadcast. Oxygen levels dipped. Fires spread with surgical intent. By the end, New Kyoto was a skeleton wrapped in smoke. 12 billion humans watched. When the feed ended, the Zarati emblem replaced the city, a geometric sigil of authority. This action, the envoy concluded, is lawful. Any retaliatory behavior will be considered evidence of cultural pathology. Silence followed. On Earth, in a chamber buried beneath kilometers of reinforced rock, no one spoke. The people in that room had seen war. Real war. Not the clean proxy conflicts of the late expansion era, but the old ones. The kind where you ran out of names before you ran out of dead. Admiral Hector Salazar sat at the head of the table. He did not move. His hands rested flat, palms down, like he was holding something in place. They archived it, he said finally. Secretary Rowe frowned. What? Salazar looked up, eyes sharp despite the age etched into his face. They didn't threaten us. They didn't hide it. They archived it. Like a zoning dispute. A general let out a short, bitter laugh. They think this is enforcement. Rose swallowed. We signed the accords. Yes, Salazar said quietly. We did. The accords had been humanity's price of admission into the galactic order. No first strike weapons. No autonomous kill systems. No population-level retaliation. Humanity had agreed, publicly and enthusiastically. Privately, the war colleges never closed. Earth had spent decades playing the part assigned to it, loud, emotional, slightly dangerous but ultimately manageable. The aliens liked to say humans were passionate. It made them feel superior. No one in the wider galaxy had bothered to ask why humanity's oldest generals never retired. Salazar leaned forward. Open vault black. The room froze. Rose shook her head immediately. That's prohibited. Entirely. Even discussing it became irrelevant the moment they executed children as policy. Salazar snapped. His voice never rose. That made it worse. Vault Black wasn't a place. It was a classification. A graveyard of ideas humanity had buried after discovering some doors should stay closed, not because they were evil, but because once opened, they never shut again. An intelligence officer spoke carefully. Sir, If we activate black assets, we're not just violating the Accords. We're erasing them. Salazar nodded. Good. Someone asked the question no one wanted to say aloud. What if the coalition intervenes? Salazar smiled thinly. Then they learn why we were invited, not conquered. Across Earth and its inner colonies, dormant systems awakened. Shipyards sealed under glaciers cracked open. Manufacturing lines designed to build agricultural platforms quietly retooled themselves into something much older and far less polite. No announcements were made. There were no speeches. Humanity didn't rage outward. It contracted. The Zarati noticed the fleet movements. Of course they did. Their analysts flagged them as emotional posturing, grief behavior typical of short-lived species. Defensive consolidation. Nothing more. They issued a warning. Further mobilization will be interpreted as hostility. Earth did not reply. That was the moment the war truly began. Not with a shot, but with a decision humanity had made before it ever reached the stars. If civilization fails, survival does not apologize. And somewhere deep in the dark, ships with no names, no registries, and no intention of being remembered slipped into motion, carrying with them a message the galaxy had never heard before. Now we stop being civilized. The Zarati believed war was an engineering problem. They had equations for it: morale decay curves, casualty tolerance limits, surrender probabilities mapped against species' lifespan and reproductive cycles. Victory to them was a matter of applying sufficient pressure in the correct sequence. Humanity did not apply pressure. It applied trauma. The first human ship appeared at the edge of the Helios 9 system without broadcasting identification. It wasn't large. In fact, it looked embarrassingly civilian: flat hull, exposed framework, patched plating like a freighter that had lost too many insurance claims. Zarati sensors tagged it instantly. Unarmed auxiliary vessel, one analyst reported. Likely symbolic. The ship drifted forward, silent, ignoring repeated hails. Zarati gunners held fire. There were rules, after all. Engagement protocols. Proper escalation ladders. Then the human ship crossed the firing threshold and unfolded. Its hull separated into millions of fragments, not an explosion, but a deliberate shedding. Each piece accelerated independently, guided by onboard logic so old it predated Zarati's stellar charts. Kinetic storm. Zarati shields collapsed not from overload, but confusion. Their matrices were designed for beams, missiles, coherent threats. Not for a cloud of screaming metal that learned from every impact. By the time the flagship's alarms caught up, the storm had already chewed through sensor arrays, antennae, and external weapon mounts, blinding the fleet before killing it. The second wave arrived while the Zarati were still arguing about what had just happened. Human ships translated into real space inside the defensive perimeter. No warning. No formation. They came in ugly, different classes, different eras, mismatched silhouettes like a museum exhibit that had learned how to hate. Some burned chemical fuel. Others warped space-time with technology humanity officially did not possess. A Zarati commander demanded clarification on open channels. "What is your objective?" it demanded. The human reply was immediate. Verification. Then the boarding pods launched. They didn't punch clean holes. They chewed their way in, using industrial breaching tools repurposed with cruel imagination. Human Marines spilled through the gaps wearing vacuum black armor marked with hand-painted symbols, names, jokes, obscene drawings. No uniformity. No insignia. Just intent. Zarati soldiers fought well. They always had. Precision weapons, disciplined formations, nerve stabilizers flooding their systems to suppress fear. It didn't help. Humans didn't advance like professionals. They advanced like survivors, using bulkheads as shields, dragging wounded forward, laughing at the wrong moments. They fought up close, where doctrine collapsed and instincts took over. A Zarati officer raised its hands in surrender. A human sergeant stopped in front of it, visor cracked, blood frozen on his armor. "We surrender," the Zarati said quickly. "This engagement has exceeded." The sergeant leaned closer, voice calm. "Compliance verification," he said. The officer didn't understand. That was the last mistake it ever made. Across Helios 9, similar scenes played out. Command ships were ignored. Control nodes were bypassed. Humans went after things the Zarati had never considered targets. Food synthesis vats. Spawning chambers. Cultural memory cores. They didn't destroy them outright. They edited them. Zarati historical archives were rewritten with human commentary layered on top. Dry, bitter, sarcastic footnotes explaining exactly how each proud conquest had actually worked. Their art broadcasts were hijacked and replaced with images of New Kyoto, looped endlessly, with timestamps and casualty counts. Panic spread through Zarati space. Emergency transmissions flooded the network. This was not how wars were supposed to go. Coalition observers demanded explanations. Threatened sanctions. Isolation. Unified response. Earth finally replied. Not with a fleet. With a message. Admiral Salazar appeared on every diplomatic channel simultaneously. He looked old. Tired. Entirely done with pretending. "You executed our civilians," he said. "On record." The Zarati high speaker tried to interrupt. Salazar raised a finger. "You also made a calculation," he continued, "that we would respond as soldiers." A pause. "We noticed something about your laws," Salazar said mildly. "You don't execute enemy combatants. Only non-combatants." The high speaker stiffened. "That is a cornerstone of civilized conduct." Salazar nodded slowly. "So we adjusted." The screen changed. Footage of human ships, unarmed, crewed by volunteers too old, too injured, or too angry to serve in uniform, drifting toward Zarati population hubs. Refugee vessels. Hospital ships. Colony barges. "Civilians," Salazar said. "Just like New Kyoto." The high speaker recoiled. "This is monstrous." Salazar's smile was thin as a blade. "No," he said. "This is compliance." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, something fundamental shifted. Humanity was no longer asking to be understood. It was demonstrating. And the universe was beginning to realize it had misunderstood humans in the most dangerous way possible. It had assumed we would stop once we proved our point. We hadn't even started explaining it yet. The Zarati Emperor died quietly. Not with fanfare. Not with a ceremonial strike of plasma or a coup of generals. Just a human envoy, sitting across from him in a room sealed against recording, and the weight of what humanity had unleashed pressing down like gravity itself. "You could have stopped this," the Emperor whispered. "You've made your point. The retaliation was sufficient." The envoy, a woman with laugh lines around her eyes and a voice that had carried orders through decades of firefights, leaned back, her hands folded. "No," she said simply. "You made yours first." She slid a data crystal across the polished table. The Emperor's mandibles trembled as he retrieved it. Inside was a simulation of Zarati space 5 years in the future, starving systems, fractured alliances, rebellions ignited and armed by humans. It was precise, surgical, inevitable. "You taught us something," she continued, her voice quiet but lethal. "That mercy is a cultural choice." He sagged into his chair. "You're monsters," he rasped. She shrugged. "We're adaptive." Outside the sealed chamber, humans didn't celebrate. They didn't sing victory songs or declare war won. They withdrew. Their fleets folded back into human space, not retreating but abandoning interest. The Zarati Empire didn't crumble immediately, it rotted. Slowly. Publicly. Cities loyal to the Emperor's rule erupted in rebellion. Food networks failed, spawning cycles collapsed, propaganda pipelines churned out caricatures of their own leaders thanks to human interference. The coalition debated intervention but found itself paralyzed, every effort countered, every calculation undone. Humanity had made war into chaos, and chaos was its ally. Back on Earth, in the command chambers buried deep beneath the crust, Salazar watched a feed of Zarati governors pleading for peace. A young officer asked, voice tight. Did we go too far? Salazar's gaze didn't leave the screen. He watched New Kyoto's ruins flicker in delayed transmissions, still smoldering years after the massacre that had sparked this war. We didn't go far enough, he said softly. We just went first. The officer's stomach twisted. We attacked civilians? Salazar nodded once. We fought the rules. That's what civilization bought them, rules. We fought them without. Rules are fragile. Humans are not. Across human-controlled sectors, veterans returned to quiet lives. Some drank themselves numb. Others trained the next generation in ways the galaxy would never document. Politicians debated wording in official communiques while generals laughed darkly in private. No one pretended this was neat or righteous. War never was. A child survivor of New Kyoto, smuggled off-world and hidden for years, looked up at a veteran and asked, Did we win? The veteran, a man with hands scarred from plasma burns, shook his head slowly. No. We reminded the universe why humans invented the word war. Civilization was not restored. Humanity had learned painfully that survival didn't require adherence to civility. Compliance was earned. Respect was taken. Mercy was optional. And somewhere, deep in the dark, a Zarati fleet, once proud and precise, drifted without command, its officers executed by the very beings they had thought weak, as humans had quietly infiltrated the chain of power, demonstrating that war could be an art, and humans were terrifyingly good artists. In a small bar orbiting Mars, the retired Marine took a slow sip from his drink and muttered, They think we won. His partner squeezed his hand. Didn't we? He laughed, a sound edged with bitter relief. No. We just made sure no one ever underestimates humans again. Above them, Earth spun, scarred, stubborn, awake. Humanity had learned that civilization is a choice, and that choice can be revoked without apology. The galaxy, for the first time, understood fear, not abstract, not theoretical, but intimate, undeniable, and entirely human. And that fear would linger. First contact changed forever. Alien diplomats approached humans with careful calculation, their words measured, their gestures cautious. Military attaches requested observers. Traders offered deals with fine print so dense it rivaled interstellar law. Every interaction carried a silent warning, do not test them. Humanity's fleets returned to familiar orbits, Earth, Mars, the outer colonies. They were battered, scarred, and filthy, but alive. The ships weren't trophies. They were reminders. Each dent, burn mark, and jury-rigged modification was a testament. Humans survived things no one else could. A Kelleran diplomat, nervously adjusting a ceremonial sash, tried to joke. Are humans still civilized? The human representative, a retired Marine who had watched empires crumble, raised a brow and sipped from a glass of Earth whiskey. We can be, he said, voice low and steady. But now you know what it costs. And that was enough. In the following months, reports trickled in. Coalitions abandoned interference in human affairs. Systems once loyal to alien overlords declared independence, quietly supplied and trained by humans. Some colonists whispered about humanity as a protective, terrifying shadow looming in the galactic backyard. Others told stories of human marines laughing while holding off fleets 3 times their size. On Earth, the political elite argued endlessly over the ethics of what had been done, but the people who mattered, the veterans, the survivors, didn't care. They were busy rebuilding, training, preparing. Humanity had learned a simple truth: morality is flexible. Civilization is a choice. And when survival demanded, humans would revoke it without hesitation. In a quiet bar orbiting Mars, the veteran Marine from Helios 9 watched the news, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. Headlines praised the stability initiatives in the outer colonies, never mentioning the bloody truth behind them. They think we won, he muttered. His partner laughed softly, squeezing his hand. Didn't we? He shook his head. No. We reminded the galaxy why humans invented the word war. Across the stars, the Zarati Empire still existed, but not as a unified force. It rotted from the inside, crippled by insurgencies and sabotage. Their diplomats spoke in whispers. Their analysts recalculated outcomes they had once believed inevitable. Humans had changed the rules of the game, and the galaxy was slowly realizing it could never go back. Humanity didn't brag. Humans didn't celebrate. They did what humans always did: survived, adapted, learned. And occasionally, when the universe peeked too close, reminded everyone that civility was a courtesy, not a guarantee. Above Earth, the planet turned silently in the void. Cities glowed, power networks hummed, children played, veterans trained, and governments argued. Humanity had paid a terrible price, but the lesson was clear. Civilization is a choice. Fear is a tool. And humans are never to be underestimated. The universe had finally learned it. And some of us were already smiling, quietly, at the thought of the next mistake anyone might make. Now we stopped being civilized.